The 2025 NFL Draft is just 2 weeks away, and I think you're going to see the Philadelphia Eagles fingerprints all over this draft. I'll tell you what I mean by that coming up next right here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Tuesday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So outside of, I'd say, the Kansas City Chiefs, there hasn't been a team more consistent in the NFL since 2016 after the Chip Kelly era of Philadelphia Eagles football, post-2015, this decade since. The Philadelphia Eagles have been, to me, the second most successful team in all of football, even over the Patriots, making 3 Super Bowls, winning 2 championships. It's the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. It's the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC. This is the equivalent to what we saw in the NBA, I think, for a while, when it was the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Warriors ran the West, the Cavaliers ran the East. I think you're getting a similar thing in the NFL right now between the Eagles and the Chiefs. So Philadelphia, they are the standard right now in the NFL, especially after that dominating Super Bowl 59 win. Like, they destroyed the Chiefs. They were a super team, one of the most talented teams in all of football. They took down what was about to be maybe the greatest dynasty in the history of the NFL. The Chiefs were on the verge of completing a three-peat, which no team in the NFL had ever done or really ever come close to. I mean, the Patriots repeated in the early 2000s. There's been teams that have repeated, but they really did not get as close to three-peating as Kansas City did. So right now, Philadelphia is on top of the world. Like, they are the gold standard of the NFL, and especially the way they were building their roster. I think it makes NFL teams believe more, because Kansas City, not that they don't do things great at a top-tier, high-class level, but they also drafted one of the greatest players of all time, and I think NFL teams will see that and be like, well, we can't replicate that. Whereas the Eagles, yeah, it's going to be hard to perfect your roster the way they did, just hitting on almost every position, but it does seem more attainable the way Philadelphia built a championship roster than Kansas City. And this is a copycat league. We all know that. NFL teams are going to look at what Philly did, and they're going to try to replicate it. And you're going to see that process happen in the 2025 NFL draft. I really do think Philadelphia's fingerprints will be all over this draft. Like, they are going to be extremely influential on the decisions that teams make, not just early on in the draft in the first round, but on day 2, day 3 as well. What do I mean by that? Like, adding some context to that statement. The Eagles are going to heavily impact this draft. Their success in 2024, their success, I would say, over the last 7 to 8 years, making 3 Super Bowls, winning 2 rings, taking down the equivalent of the NFL's version of Michael Jordan and LeBron James in a championship in less than a decade, is going to get NFL teams noticing and trying to repeat their blueprint. What can they do in the draft to try to be like the Philadelphia Eagles? What are some lessons the NFL can learn from Philadelphia that we'll see get put to practice in less than 3 weeks when the NFL draft kicks off, 2 weeks away from Thursday? One thing I think you'll see, teams are going to take chances on quarterback prospects in the middle of the first round at the end of day 1. I know it's a weaker quarterback class, but I do not think you will only see Cam Ward go number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans. You'll see Shedeur Sanders either go number 2 to Cleveland, number 3 to New York. I'll say at the latest he goes to the Saints at number 9. I think a dark horse team to take Sanders are the San Francisco 49ers at number 11, but I don't think it's going to be just that outcome where you only see Cam Ward and Sanders get taken in the top 15. Maybe both get taken in the top 3, but it's guaranteed Cam Ward's going 1. Shedeur, I think, is going to go in the top 15, probably top 10. But I do think you'll see teams as well take a chance on a Jackson Dart from Ole Miss, take a chance on a Jalen Milroe from Alabama. Teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers that are picking constantly in that 15 to 25 range. Like, they're 9-8 every single year. They always lose in the first round. They're not good enough to win a championship, but they're not bad enough to be picking at the top for one of these top-tier quarterback prospects. When you're a team like that that's caught in this purgatory, and I said it back in 2021 for Philly, if Jalen Hurts didn't pan out, you as well would eventually, because Philadelphia is never bad enough to be picking at the top either, you're eventually going to have to take a chance on a riskier prospect in the middle or the end of the first round. And Pittsburgh did that with Kenny Pickett in 2022, and while that execution didn't work out, the philosophy behind it was right. And I think teams are going to see Philadelphia make it work, turn Jalen Hurts into a star, a second-round prospect that had, while he was not a finished product, he did have a couple elite traits that they bet on. The deep ball, the mobility, the clutch fourth quarter play, like the leadership, the maturity, some traits that you can't measure on the field. They're not going to take the advantage over another prospect that's 6'5", like Josh Allen, that can run a 4.4, that has one of the strongest arms in football. But teams, I think, are going to see Jackson Dart. They're going to see Jalen Milroe. They're going to see their mobility, their ability to push the ball down the field, the deep ball, the aggressive arm strength, the clutch fourth quarter play, the way these two guys carry themselves like mature faces of the franchise. They're going to see the floor is low, but I think they're going to look at Philadelphia and say, they made it work with Jalen Hurts. If we build the right support system around this player, we can maximize a very high ceiling. And I think Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe are both very reminiscent of Jalen Hurts in different ways. Like Jackson Dart, he said it himself at the Combine that he replicates his game after Jalen Hurts. And you can see that he is a power runner. He's not the fastest quarterback in the world, but he runs with power. He's elusive in the short area. Really good improv player outside of structure. He loves to push the football down the field, has really good touch with the deep ball. He is a good leader, extremely clutch in the fourth quarter. And then you look at Jalen Milroe. You know, Jalen Hurts is one of his heroes, and it's a main reason that he went to the University of Alabama. He carries himself just like Jalen, like that maturity, that stoic nature. He got that from Jalen. And Milroe, like Jalen coming out of college, isn't close to being a refined pocket passer. Like, he does not process the field well at all. His accuracy, it's a lot lower than even Jalen's was coming out of Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts was a much more accurate passer than Jalen Milroe, but like Jalen Hurts, Jalen Milroe is, to me, coming out of this draft, the best mobile quarterback of any of these prospects. Like, he, I think, is the best runner of any college prospect since Lamar Jackson came out in 2018. He runs with an explosiveness, an open field danger, elusiveness, the footwork. He can also run with power. We haven't seen somebody like this since, I would say, Lamar. I mean, Justin Fields is close, but Jalen Milroe is on another level, and he has one of the strongest arms in this draft class. The floor is so low. Like, this could be another Anthony Richardson, a Paxton Lynch, like a trait C prospect that just does not work out. But you got to be willing to take a chance on this kind of player, or else you're never, like I always say this, if you weren't willing to take Anthony Richardson or Paxton Lynch, you wouldn't be willing to take a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson. Jalen Hurts isn't that kind of level of talent, but Jalen Hurts is another player that had a few special characteristics that Philadelphia took a chance on and banked on him developing his weaknesses, building a support system around him, and it worked. And teams that are not picking at the top, eventually you're going to have to talk yourself into a Jalen Hurts kind of prospect, a Jalen Milroe, a Jackson Dart. And I think you're going to see teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers. If the Cleveland Browns don't take Sanders with the second overall pick, you could see them try to trade back into the first round. You could try to see that as well. You could envision that as well with a team like the New York Giants or the Las Vegas Raiders. Like, couldn't you see the Raiders try to be the new Eagles, where they take Ashton Genty with the 6th overall pick, they have Geno Smith for 2 years, they draft Jalen Milroe, let him develop behind Geno for a few years, and then boom, you have a Milroe-Genty backfield, and you try to replicate that Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley backfield. I think that is something very realistic you're going to see teams do this year in the draft. And another thing on day one, you're going to see running backs go early. Day one, day two, I think there's a chance, I think you're definitely going to see 2 running backs go in the first round. Genty's a lock to go top 10. Between Henderson from Ohio State, Marion Hampton from UNC, between Henderson and Hampton, I think you're going to see one of those guys go in the first round as well. There's a chance that all 3 players get taken on day one. Team's going to see that Philadelphia proved you can win a championship by running the football. And especially in the modern day NFL where there's a radical movement on defense to stop the deep ball, these cover two shells, the NFL's offensive response to that defensive movement is going to be more of what the Eagles have done. Run the football. Have that be the face of your offense. And to do that, you're going to invest more in running back. You're going to invest in a Genty, a Henderson, a Hampton. It didn't just work with the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, but the Ravens with Derrick Henry, the Packers with Josh Jacobs, the Houston Texans with Joe Mixon. All the best of the best this year ran the football well. The Bills with James Cook, the Chiefs with Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. Teams are going to see that blueprint this year, and I think you're going to see a little bit of a revival from the running back position, not just through contracts and free agency, but the NFL draft as well. And it's a really good class for that. Genty, Hampton, Henderson, Judkins from Ohio State. Like, this is a loaded running back class. I think you could see definitely 2 guys go in the first round. There's a chance there could be 3 running backs taken on day 1. All 3 of those guys are going to go early in, whether it's the end of the first round, early in the second round. You're going to see those guys go early. And I think Philadelphia is a main reason for that new different approach to the running back position compared to the last decade where they were just chewed up and spit out. And another lesson from the Eagles in 2024, you're going to see teams invest in the trenches. They are going to overinvest in the trenches. And the Eagles didn't reinvent the wheel here. They're not the first team to build their championship team through the offensive line, the defensive line. But I think pass rushers are going to fly off the board. And a lot of that is because it's a weaker class out of their positions. It's a really deep class on the defensive line, on the edge, at defensive tackle. But teams are going to be reactive. Seeing Philadelphia manhandle Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, seeing Josh Sweat get after him, but not just Josh Sweat, Milton Williams and Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis getting a sack, and Jalix Hunt, Moro Ijoma. I mean, that's like 7 to 8 pass rushers that were just giving Patrick Mahomes hell. They're going to see that. They're going to see Mahomes has now lost 2 Super Bowls in that same way where the other team just overwhelmed him with a deep defensive line. And I think this year, with this kind of class, you're going to see teams overinvest in pass rushers, maybe even double dip and like 2 pass rushers in the top 3 rounds. You're going to see that a lot. So I think the Eagles, they're going to have their fingerprints all over this draft, not just on offense, but on defense as well. Coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, I want to get into some post-draft talk. After the NFL draft, free agency is still going to continue. The Eagles have had success in the post-free agency, post-draft, I should say, UFA pool. Who could be that next target, their next Mekhi Becton, let's say? We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. They're doing everything that you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products of all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. It's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptile, and small pets too. My dad actually used to be a guy that had a lot of exotic pets. I had snapping turtles growing up and geckos and African bullfrogs. You can get products for all these animals at Chewy. They also make it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling around nationwide. AutoShip is a game changer as well. You can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, or any essentials so you never run out. You can easily change or cancel it anytime. I'm a first-time pet owner. I just got my cat. I adopted her last June. Chewy has had my back for this last year, making it a lot easier to transition to having a cat around. I've never had one before, and Chewy made it easy. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. All right, we continue on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, and the Eagles have had a ton of success building a championship team, mainly through the NFL draft. I mean, since 2021, Howie Roseman just has not missed. But Howie Roseman has also added some key pieces to a championship puzzle after the draft, like on the fly, positions that he wasn't able to fill in that first wave of free agency. He wasn't able to fill it through the draft. He's been able to come back around in May, June, July, heck, even August, and add some big-time playmakers that have helped you win titles and compete for championships year after year, whether it's through free agency or through trades. Like, that's been a thing he's been very good at. You look at 2017, he missed out on that deep running back class, only taking Donnell Pumphrey, right? Just missed on Dalvin Cook in the second round, didn't get his hands on him. They had interest in McCaffrey that year. He went in the top 10 to Carolina. So they brought in LeGarrette Blount in June. LeGarrette Blount was instrumental in winning Super Bowl 52. That year, they also traded for Ronald Darby in August, and he was a key starter of your defense in that Super Bowl season. You look at 2022, like they missed out on the corner and safety market in free agency, in the draft. They missed out on Marcus Williams, couldn't really bring in another corner opposite Darius Slay. Who do they bring in? James Bradbury, who's an all-pro that year. They bring him in May, signing him from the Giants. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, they trade for at the last second, a week before the season starts in August. You look at 2024. Howie Roseman signed Mekhi Becton in May after the offensive line run happened right in front of him in the first round, in the second and third round. Like, he just could not get a lineman. Comes back around, takes, Keegan and McMahon on day 3, but wasn't the impact he wanted in the trenches. So he brings in Mekhi Becton. Becton is a top-tier starter at right guard in a Super Bowl season where you defeat the Kansas City Chiefs. So Howie's been really good at improvising, and if he doesn't fill a hole in March in free agency and April in the draft, it doesn't mean he's not going to fill it. So let's say that happens again. And for me, the main position I'm looking at where the hole might not be filled through the draft is in the secondary. When you look at the starting safety position, you have Sidney Brown, but you're going to want to add some more competition. Let's say Malachi Starks doesn't fall, Nick Emenwari doesn't fall, or you just don't take them because there's a really good pass rusher on the board or an offensive lineman that you want. And let's say day 2, like Xavier Watts from Notre Dame isn't there with the 64th overall pick, or Winston Jr. from Penn State, and they just don't really get one of those top-tier safety prospects. I think that's the position to take the closest look out for after the draft for the Eagles to sign somebody of note. I think Justin Simmons makes all the sense in the world. Of course, he played for Christian Parker and Vic Fangio. He talked about it today on Kay Adams' show that Philadelphia would be one of the top teams he wants to play for because of that familiarity. He's an older player, 31 years old. He wants to win a championship. He wants to win now. Winning is going to be a priority. Familiarity at this stage of his career is going to be a priority. I think bringing in Justin Simmons is the most obvious move that will happen if they don't take a safety in the first 3 rounds. And again, I don't love Justin Simmons at this age. I don't think he'll be an upgrade over Chauncey Gardner-Johnson by any means, but I do think he would be a solid complement to the strengths of Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown and the deficiencies of those players as well. Neither guy is really a one-on-one coverage safety, whereas Justin Simmons, I think, is a big upgrade in the coverage department over those two, and I think he might even be a better coverage safety right now than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is. He's not the playmaker he used to be where year after year the guy's getting 5 to 6 picks. Still had 2 last year with the Atlanta Falcons, had 3 in 2023, but he's not that guy anymore, but he is an upgrade in the coverage department. If you want Sidney Brown to focus on just coming downhill, like covering the deep ball sideline to sideline, Reed Blankenship doing what he does best as well, I think adding Justin Simmons for cheap on a 1-year deal in May or June, July, if he wants to skip training camp, I think that would make a ton of sense. I think that's the most obvious move to have on your radar if they don't sign, or I should say draft a safety like early on. In the first 3, I would say even the first 2 rounds, they'll likely bring in Justin Simmons. Like, that's the move that makes the most sense, right? I don't think it's just Justin Simmons, though. I think you could definitely see the Eagles as well bring in a player like Asante Samuel Jr., Rasul Douglas. I know you guys probably are rolling your eyes because those are 2 my guys that I want on this team. Maybe it's a heart pick over a head pick. But you look at the cornerback position, if they don't draft somebody early, they did bring in Adoree Jackson as competition for Keely Ringo, but Adoree Jackson's kind of a shell of who he used to be. If the market plays out where you could get these guys for a lot cheaper than you thought. Originally, I thought these 2 were going to be highly coveted in free agency. I thought they were going to get a big contract. Most sites I saw had them graded as top 50 overall free agents, regardless of position. Now that they've waited a little bit post free agency, maybe their market isn't going to be as strong as we once thought, and they have to sign a short-term deal, especially Asante. Maybe he needs to sign a one-year prove-it deal. Yes, they don't need these guys like they would need a Justin Simmons because they have Keely Ringo, they have Adoree Jackson. But if the market allows these guys to be available for cheap, why not kick the tires on Asante Samuel and have him, Keely Ringo, and Adoree Jackson be in an open battle opposite Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean? Like, what? It can't hurt. Like having Rasul Douglas in the secondary to compete with those guys, it couldn't hurt. I think they're both upgrades over Adoree Jackson. I think they're legitimate competition for Keely Ringo. But at the same time, if Keely beats them out, you don't have to start those guys. So I think bringing in a DB is this year is Mekhi Becton of last year, the Bradbury and CGJ moves of 2022, bringing in LeGarrette Blount and Ronald Darby in 2017. Like if they're going to make a move, an impactful one in May, June, July, or August, I think it would likely be at safety or corner, or it could be a tight end. I think a trade could also happen if they miss out on those like top 6 or 7 prospects and Dallas Goedert's a post-June cut or trade designation. Maybe they trade for like a Michael Mayer of the Raiders. Luke Musgrave is a player that I keep bringing up from the Packers. Fell out of favor because of injuries. Tucker Kraft has emerged as a really good player for them at tight end. They have a bunch of weapons at wide receiver to spread the ball around to. Musgrave is a former second-round pick that you could maybe kick the tires on. Michael Mayer, same thing, a former second-round pick you could kick the tires on. Is Kyle Pitts available with the Atlanta Falcons? Maybe you go for him as a rental player over Dallas Goedert if it doesn't work out with Dallas. I would just make it work with Goddard at that point. But I think those are the 3 spots to keep the closest eye out for. I would say it's safety, corner, and tight end. But it could also be like defensive tackle, or they could add more linebacker depth if they don't bring somebody in. Kazir White is still out there. There are still some names to take note of in free agency that I think Philadelphia can bring in after the draft, and they've had a lot of success with this blueprint in past years. All right, guys, we'll wrap up the show coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. I have a bold draft take that I want to get into regarding a player that we've brought up a lot that could fit the Eagles on day one. We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting just so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. I love betting on the Lakers. Unfortunately, sorry, Sixers fans, that's my squad. Luka Doncic and LeBron. They're not my squad. I'm a LeBron guy. I love betting on LeBron James, and I can do that through FanDuel. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, so I'm going to lead you into the night to recap the show with one final draft conversation, a bold draft take that I thought about. The other day I saw Pro Football Focus kind of discussing this, like bold draft takes. What's going to just shock the world this year, like Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix last year going in the first round, or you look back at 2019, I think Cleveland Farrell going in the top 5 and being like that number 1 edge rusher taken in such a deep class by the Raiders was unbelievable. Like that, I remember I was live with Gino and Lars Lewis at the time, our 2 hosts back in 2018. Those are for the OG Locked On listeners. I remember Lars Lewis and Gino Camilleri, of course. I remember like Cleveland Farrell going, or Daniel Jones, and it shocked all of us. What could be the equivalent of that this year? I think it's going to be a pass rusher. I think you could see another version of Cleveland Farrell this year. Not saying this player won't have success at the NFL level like Cleveland didn't, but Donovan Ezereku from Boston College, my bold draft take is not only is he not going to be available with the 32nd overall pick for the Eagles, I think he's going to be the second edge rusher taken in this draft. I think it's going to be Abdul Carter goes in the top 4, whether it's to the Browns, the Giants or the Patriots. It's going to be Abdul Carter in the top 5. I think Ezereku is the second pass rusher taken. And I think it's going to shock everybody. And here's why. Donovan Ezereku is a high floor player, a very productive player. Like 17 and a half sacks last year. He's got power. He's got the motor. He's got the violence. He's got the wingspan. He has the traits that you want. He's explosive off the line of scrimmage. Is he the bendiest, shiftiest player in the world? No, but he's a safe prospect. And you look at some of these other edge rushers, yeah, you might fall in love with the potential of James Pierce Jr., of Shamar Stewart, right? Of Mikael Williams or a Jalen Walker. But there's a lot of big question marks with all those guys. Mike Green as well, whether it's on the field or off the field. With Mike Green, it's off the field with the sexual assault accusations, right? With Shamar Stewart, it's the historic low production for a first-round prospect. Like, he just doesn't produce, and that's concerning. For James Pierce Jr., there's some maturity concerns off the field. For Mikael Williams, there's a high floor, but there's questions about his ceiling as a pass rusher. There's questions regarding all those players. I'm not saying there's no questions regarding Donovan Ezereku, but I could totally see a team. And Jalen Walker is another guy. Like, is he an edge rusher? Is he a stand-up linebacker on the inside? Like, is he this tweener that doesn't really have a high ceiling? He can do both, like jack of all trades, master of none. There's real questions about those guys. I could totally see a team saying, let's go for the productive, high floor, hard-working leader that's Donovan Ezereku. We're going to take him with a top 10, top 15 overall pick. I could totally seeing that happen. And he ends up being like this year's Cleveland Farrell, where in 2019, Bosa goes ahead of him. But there were a lot of other guys that I thought would be ahead of Cleveland Farrell, like Brian Burns. I thought that year would absolutely be taken ahead of Farrell. And then Cleveland goes with the 4th overall pick that year coming out of Clemson. And it shocked all of us. I could totally see in a deep class of edge rushers where it might just come down to personal preference. Like, every team's evaluation process is different. Like, pick your strength, pick your poison. I could see a team, it just takes one. I could see a team saying, nope, we're concerned about James Pierce and Mike Green off the field. We don't love Mikael Williams' ceiling as a pass rusher. We think Shamar Stewart is just way too risky of a pick. Like, the traits are there, but the production is just way too low for us to take a chance on this guy in the first round. Maybe in round 2 or round 3, but he's just going to be too rich for a top 10, top 15 pick. And we don't know how to use Jalen Walker. We don't want to deal with it. I could see a team saying all of that and saying, let's take Ezereku. That's going to be my bold draft take. And I'll have more on the show later on this week, but my main number 1 bold draft take that's going to shock all of us on day 1, after Abdul Carter, Donovan Ezereku of Boston College is going to be the first edge rusher off the board. He's going to be a top 10 or top 15 overall pick. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on X at LockedOnBirds, at DiBiase LOE. Hit us up on our YouTube community page as well. What's your bold draft take? What's going to shock the world in the first round like Michael Penix did last year and Bo Nix, like Cleveland Farrell in 2019? Unfortunately for the Eagles, they were a part of a shocking the world story in the draft, taking Jalen Reagor in 2020 over Justin Jefferson, taking Jalen Hurts in the second round when they had Carson Wentz. 2020 was just a bunch of shocks from the Eagles. What's your shock of the draft? Hit me up, like I said, on X at DiBiase LOE, at Locked On Birds, or our YouTube community page at Locked On Eagles on YouTube. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.